She's laughing at our video. You got to unmute. I don't know if it unmuted. I can't hear you. We're going to get you eventually. Good morning, Giants. We're having some technical issues. We've got our special guest coming on with us in a little bit. Hopefully she can get on. But we got our special guest. Can you hear me, Ryan? I can't hear you at all. So he'll come back. Give me a thumbs up or a comment if you can hear this. So not uncommon to have technical issues when we start these things. Let's see. We got one eyeball, right? So we're trying to get our guest on here. So we'll be just a minute. We might have to redo this whole thing and start over. So if we do, we'll jump back on. Ryan, you got audio?
I'm hoping we have audio.
There you are. Kerry Butler says loud and clear, trucker.
Whoop, whoop. Here we are now. Ready or not, here we come.
Well, while we're waiting for our guest might have some issues getting on. So while we're waiting for Julia, should we catch everybody up on where we're at, Ryan? And
you know where I'm at so far this morning? It's they make the sparkling ice with no sugar, but they added one with caffeine, and
no way.
That's where I'm at the moment.
if Sparkling Ice was sponsoring this, they would be loving that now.
Yeah. Brought to you by Sparkling Ice Caffeine.
So this is my daughter, Capri. Come say hi to everybody. Say hi. Welcome to Wake Up Giants. Going to be a good show if we can get Julia on. Still an addict.
We will. That's right. Hey, once an addict, always an addict. But I'm working on it. I'm doing some other things. I've taken my gummy vegetables and gummy fruits this morning, so my mom would be proud.
So I'll tell one thing that we got going. We did get the book up on Amazon, and so you're able to buy the book there. So make sure that you jump on over to Giants and Smalls on Amazon.com.
It's a scrolling book.
It's a scrolling book.
It's our high-end graphics design team that put this graphic together.
Yeah.
It scrolls.
Well, shoot, man. I don't know where our guest is, but Ryan, were you able to get her?
She had said that she was coming on. I think she was working on her. Let's see if anything else has come up.
So hang tight with us for just a second, and we'll get there. There she is.
There we go.
We got her.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Can you say good morning to Julia?
Good morning.
Say hi. You got a vocal bot. This thing. Shake that. Did you know she's an opera singer? Are you an opera singer, or did I just make that up?
I am. Are we both opera singers, though?
She wants to be a singer. She wants to be on American Idol.
Wow. Are you going to sing for us today?
Nope.
No? Next time?
Maybe so, huh? Maybe we can get Julia to sing for us.
Or put Julia on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, if I sing, will you sing?
Oh.
She's like, nope. Well, there you have it.
It'll be a
That doesn't sound like a good deal to me.
Yeah. Well, good.
It looks beautiful where you're coming from this morning. I've seen some of your videos over the last week or two, the sunsets and some of those amazing things. That looks like a better spot than where I'm at. I'm in a basement.
Well, is the audio okay?
Yeah, it's great.
Am I coming in okay? Okay, great.
Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, you guys are coming in loud and strong.
Perfect. So we're gonna dive in. Julia, we've got your bio up, and your bio is incredible. Actually, if people haven't read it, I'd recommend reading it. But you've overcome a lot in your life to get to where you are, and I want to dive into your story, but I want to go a little different here. I want to explore what life was like before you had your awakening. And then as we go through your story, I want to share your journey, and we might get off track. And that's the beauty of this show, is the more we go down the rabbit hole, the better. So if you have an idea and we go down that stream, let's go for it. Does that work for you?
Sounds awesome.
Perfect. So
Do it.
describe life. Yeah. Before your awakening, before you woke up to your potential and started shifting, what was life like for you?
So I think I really came into my awakening really early in life. And I didn't really understand what was going on. It was very intense. So really, I mean, I was born in Moscow, Russia. And is the lighting okay? Because it looks kind of funky to me.
It's good enough. The message is more important than the lighting. So you look good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure
look like an angel.
You all. Okay. I was coming in dark, so I moved closer to it, and now it's coming in super bright. So I can move. So
and
let
I'm
me know.
Proud of you for wearing a hat. Usually it's just me and Ryan.
Yeah, this is the best part. I love this right now.
I watched you guys' interviews, and I was like, I got a match. I got to fit in, and we got the red hat thing going, and I have a red hat. So, I just grabbed it. So I mean, I was born in Moscow, Russia, and I moved to the US, to Los Angeles, when I was 5. And what's interesting about that is that in Russia, preschool wasn't really a thing. And in the Soviet Union, which is where I was born, technically, I moved here right before the collapse of the Soviet Union, or well, technically right after, but right before the full collapse. It's kind of like in the middle of the collapse in 1991. And so basically, preschool wasn't a thing there. And so I interacted with kids through certain activities and things that I was a part of, but I wasn't really, in society. I wasn't really active in interaction with a lot of kids until I got to the US, where I didn't speak any English. And so my first interaction with kids was really from this position of kind of the observer, where I did get bullied quite a bit because it was a really easy target. It was very different. So that was intense, but more intense than that was watching kids bully each other and watching kids interact with each other with this meanness that I was raised with so much love and support in my family. And, my family's not perfect, but there just wasn't a lot of anger, and there wasn't a lot of backstabbing. It's a very small family, a family of survivors. And, I think everyone in my family has always recognized how privileged we are to just exist, because so many of our, I don't even want to say ancestors, because it's my grandfather, my grandmother's whole families, basically most of them perished during the war. So it's like not really ancestors, it's recent past. And so I was born into this really loving, protective environment. And then I encountered human cruelty really early on. And it was very clear to me that was what was happening. And the two just really didn't reconcile. And so I feel like for me, that was really the awakening. And when I was 6, I would tell my family, I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make people better. And they kind of just laughed at me. But I always was on this mission for as long as I can remember.
That's awesome. So the steps that you kind of went through, that your family went through, was they went through pure survival going through the war, which came out as a family unit, like a tribe, so to speak. And from there you had a foundation where you could launch from. So you really had a dynamic in your family where it was beneficial for where you are right now. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. I feel very, very blessed because I got to witness. I also, in Russia, we were actually pretty well off. We had a pretty good situation. My mom had a really powerful job that was really a rarity for a woman, especially a Jewish woman at that time in Russia. It was really unusual. And so we were really set. And then we moved here, and my parents started out in minimum wage jobs, literally completely destitute, starting with nothing. And so I got to see both sides really early on too. And it gave me a different kind of appreciation for material possessions, for having or not having, and all of that. So I feel very, very blessed on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I had a family that I met with the other day that was from South Africa, and they came here with $300 to their name. And from that built a lifestyle that most of us would be, if you say jealous of, we'd be jealous of. Just beautiful that they created that from nothing. And it's like your family created that ability to go from survival to thriving, and then laying that foundation where you can launch from. You decided, look, I'm going to change the world. Why that choice? If you go into that, yeah. And how? Like, how did you feel you were going to do that?
The how is what I wasn't really sure about when I was 6. It took a while, a few more years to figure that one out. And I'm still on the discovery journey for that one. But the why was just, I feel like we all go through these things right now, especially in the world that we're in. We're faced with cruelty. We're faced with really, really challenging things to kind of just behold, right? There's so much suffering that we're witnessing, and some of it we're experiencing, but even more of it we're witnessing. And it's sort of like you get to this place where you wonder, wow, if this is the world, if this is really what the world is, do I even want to be a part of it? Like, what's the point? Why, like, is there, if such cruelty and such suffering can exist, what are we doing here? Right. And I feel like when I was very little, just seeing how unnecessary that was, at least in my tiny little, elementary school classroom, where kids would just torture each other for no reason at all. I mean, this is so microcosm, like such a tiny little space of, slice of the world and time, but that was my world. Right. And if I'm not, I'm either going to just detach myself from the world and not be a part of it because this is awful, or I'm going to be part of the solution. And it seemed clear to me that I needed to be part of the solution.
So do you think it's any more cruel than it ever has been, or we just have more access to the information? Kind of setting you up there.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that we all have what I've been really playing with lately, what I've been exploring and digging into within myself, is that we all have dark elements to ourselves. Like, there's a darkness and a light within each of us. And it's not a or, it's an and it's really kind of walking in both aspects of yourself that you can find your way. Yeah. And so I think that it's always been there. I think it's part of human nature. I think it's part of our animalistic nature too. And I think it's really around, how do we bolster our inner strength, our inner sense of our power, so that we're walking in our power, so that we're making decisions from that place of feeling empowered rather than defending our power. Because I think a lot of cruelty happens when we're defending our power.
Yeah, go into that a little bit more. Explain that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we feel threatened, and oftentimes that's an internal experience, right? Every once in a while, there's an external action, there's an external ramification that is direct, that, someone is questioning us or really putting us down. We have experiences like that. And usually we use those experiences as this sword that we then keep thrusting into our own hearts later on. And that's what we call trauma. But most of the trauma, of the traumatic effect that we experience, is an internal experience. It's not a sustained trauma that's happening externally for most people. There are people that are going through horrific things where there is sustained external trauma, for sure. But most of us, I would say, 90% of the people that I work with and know haven't had that kind of experience. It's really just a couple of traumatic things that have happened externally that we then internalize and we keep reliving. And when we feel that we've lost our sense of our agency in our lives, when we feel that we've lost our sense of our power, then we go to all sorts of lengths to really to return to that place of feeling strong. And the way that we do that is often by making others feel, making ourselves feel strong with respect to others, compared to others. And so it's that kind of comparison game where we're playing this game outside of ourselves and we're trying to get our power internally from an external experience. That's where we start to be cruel to other people, and sometimes it's a subconscious thing just to feel that we're elevated within. But the thing is that what I've learned is you can never experience true empowerment when it's sourced from an external source, because that external source is always going to be finite. It's always going to vacillate. And the other layer of it is that everything we experience is very subjective. So, the degree to which the external source of power that we're getting, or the external validation, is present or not present, it's not an objective measurement. One day we might feel like it's there, one day we might feel like it's not there, and that has nothing to do with its actual being there.
Yeah, this is incredible. I don't know if you can see this, my tattoo. It's hard to do it on the camera, but it's the two wolves, and it's black and white, yin and yang. And the idea there is that we all have darkness and we all have light. And it's not a matter of feeding one over the other. It's honoring that. Are you drinking beer already? I hope that's beer.
It's meant to be.
But the idea,
hilarious.
We need to honor both sides of us. And I appreciate that you're talking about this. Philip Zimbardo does a lot of work. I think he was in charge of the Stanford prison experiment, where he showed that really good people can do terrible things. And we all have it within us. And when you take on a power where you're over somebody else, that's where you can get really cruel. If you think you're more powerful than somebody else, then you can become cruel. If your power is drawn from within and you're honoring that powerful side of you and building that up, that's different. That's more sustainable. What I'm hearing you say is that it's not sustainable, and it's really damaging to pull your power from somebody else or something else outside of you.
It's not just unsustainable and dangerous. I think it's also it's actually a false sense of power.
Okay.
It's not really there. And it's almost like we're if we imagine energy as being this light that's shining forward, it's almost like, or if we think about lightsabers, right, Star Wars style, like,
Yeah.
It's like we don't have and I'm not an expert, I really shouldn't have gone down this road. There's going to be people that I'm totally butchering Star Wars here, but like the lightsaber is coming from our own, the hand, like the lightsaber that we're holding. It's like we're borrowing the light from another lightsaber and we're having it funnel into ours temporarily, but at some point that's going to run out, or the other lightsaber is going to move, or something's going to happen, or we're going to lose our concentration and not hold ours in the right position, and that's no longer going to be effective, and then we're going to be in this darkness. And if we just learn how to utilize our own lightsaber, how to light it up using our own energy field, which is so powerful, I think that's what most of us don't realize and are almost afraid of our own power, in recognizing that we can be totally self-sustaining in creating our own and sourcing our own power. I really believe that we are a vessel through which energy flows, and we have a way, it's actually really simple, to channel that energy that's flowing through us and allow it really to expand beyond what we can possibly imagine, right? Just to really expand in its own natural course. And
you're speaking my language here. The vessels and the universe and that unlimited potential, but we're the ones that kind of create the flow. We
Exactly.
stop the flow, or we allow the flow to come. Keep going.
It seems like people that like maybe they're in a position, like a worldly position of power, a boss, somebody like that has maybe some personal things that they've never dealt with, but then they it's like they transmute or put their thumb on people, right, to hold them down, to have a false of power, and they're not deep, or they probably have a real sense of insecurity. Does that?
Yeah, and I can you hear me okay? Because you were kind of
that cut out pretty hard there, so I don't know if
I'll just launch in. He might still be talking.
No, you're good. Go ahead and jump in. I think we lost him there.
Okay, he'll be back. He'll be back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's the other piece that I think is interesting. I work with a lot of leaders. I work with a lot of executive executive leaders and people that are kind of in senior positions in major organizations and companies. And I think what happens is a lot of people just assume that when you get to a certain point, you don't have insecurities or you don't have questions. You know what to do. You have clarity, a certain kind of.
That's so true.
Yeah, so many people seek clarity in their lives and in their work, and they want to get to a place where everything is just crystal clear.
Right.
And the reality is, it's never crystal clear. No one ever knows what's actually going on, right? We all get to just create the next step. That's all we can really control. And even that we can't really control. We can just fully kind of behold what's happening in that very small increment of time. And I think that the big opportunity for leaders of all stages in their leadership journey, whether it's just learning to be a good self-leader or leading an entire organization of thousands of people, is that the opportunity is really to recognize how to keep walking forward in uncertainty, how to keep holding your head up in uncertainty, and how to lead other people through change and uncertainty. And we're seeing that, amplified right now in the time that we're living in. But I think it's always been true.
There's something about that darkness. We all have it, that not knowing the future. We all try to predict the future, but we do that with the heuristics that we have within us. We take the knowledge that we have, we blend it all together, and then we make a projection of what we think is going to happen. But if leaders are honest, they'll say in a lot of cases, I don't know what the future holds, but we're going to take that small step together. We're going to figure it out together. And if we need to realign as we do that, we'll do that. That's powerful. I think that's a beautiful way to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think when we face insecurity and when we start to feel that sense of insecurity, sometimes if we believe that our job is to eradicate it, if we believe that it shouldn't be there, if we feel like we're an imposter for being in this senior leadership position and have this, or even in a lower level position starting, whatever it is, if we think that, we should have it figured out, we don't, that's when we start to grab onto various sometimes ill-suited tools, right? Like we're grabbing other people's lightsabers and they don't work and things like that. And that's where the dark side really comes out, because we feel so threatened, but we're threatened not by the reality of what's occurring, because it's totally natural that you don't know what's happening or what to do next.
Yeah.
We're threatened by our own perception of ourselves in that moment.
I picture a bear and a honey badger. The bear corners that badger and it's so much smaller than the bear, but you make that thing angry and it's going to chase that bear away. And I feel like in leadership, like what you're describing is that sense of when we feel powerless and attacked and cornered, that we can get pretty attacking back. And we might even create some damage. It's not that we're chasing bears. It's just we might create some damage in a relationship. I was going to write something here about embracing so you were talking about when that uncertainty comes, that feeling of insecurity, to not, what happens is they fight, right? They grasp on or hold on to something that's not good for them. When in reality is if they can accept that they're feeling insecure or that they have a weakness, from that space of acceptance, then they can grasp on to things that are better for their business or themselves. Am I right in that?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's been my experience as a business owner in both of the companies that I co-founded 12 years ago. It's been my experience in working with leaders in every field. That's exactly what it's about. That's the trick. That's the tricky part.
When you accept that insecurity, you can look for solutions. But if you can't accept that security, then you grasp onto things that are kind of like the badger and the bear.
Yeah.
But the bear is your company and you just chased it away in a way.
Yeah. And I think I don't know that you chased it away exactly, kind of, in that analogy, but I think it's that you have lost your connection to it. It's kind of like you chased yourself away.
Okay. I like that better. Yeah.
Yeah.
So really just sit with it and own it.
And be okay with the uncertainty. I think all of life, like maturing in life and learning to do life better, right? And people often come to me like, they ask me, what's your favorite hack for being better in business or for being more successful. And I think that probably the biggest hack is getting as comfortable as you can with being uncomfortable. Getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because life is uncomfortable, you know, and it really, nobody promised a comfortable experience here. That doesn't mean that it's not potent and fun and full and rich and beautiful and amazing and a gift. But, you know, I learned this really early on in business school. You're either growing or you're dying as a business, right? Any business is either growing or dying at any moment in time, which I think is so dramatic, right? But if you kind of think about it, it's either the revenue's going up or it's going down, you know, and if it keeps going down, eventually it's dead. And if it keeps going up, you know, it's continuing to grow. And the same thing is true of your team. You're either growing it or you're truncating it. There's always movement. It's never static. It's never plateaued permanently or for lengthy periods of time.
I agree. I think we're on a spiral, and there's no sitting still on a spiral. You atrophy or you grow. And your body does that, and businesses do that, and life does that. If something's not receiving nutrients, it dies. And then when it receives nutrients, it picks back up where it left off. But there's some foundation. But you got to keep going. So why, of all the things you could be doing, this business leadership, why did you choose to do that? Is it because of your businesses, or did you have that vision before?
Well, just to finish out that thought real quick, you know, so I think that you're growing or you're dying applies to us personally too, right? So that's true of our cells. Literally, our cells are constantly dividing and expanding, and there's amazing growth that's happening in the physical body, as well as, I mean, if we go into the energetic body and all of that, that's a whole other ball game in terms of growth that's happening at all times. Right. And if we know that we're constantly growing, the thing about growth is it's uncomfortable. I mean, pretty much always. Because when you're growing into something that you haven't been before. And newness and new experiences and kind of stabilizing yourself in a new context is always going to be uncomfortable. So you kind of have to decide, do I want to be comfortable and be dying? Or do I want to be uncomfortable and be growing? Or, you know, do I want to be growing, and am I okay then with being uncomfortable as part of the process? And I think it's when we accept that as a necessary part of the process. I think the biggest, and I'll move into answering your question in a second, but the biggest obstacle to enjoying the growth is judging ourselves in growth mode.
Let's not move on. Let's stay here for a minute, because this is really pulling up some really good info. And I want to remind people, you can comment. So as you comment, we'll share these. If you have questions or thoughts around this, please share them. But the idea of that growth being uncomfortable, resistance to change in an organization is a huge problem. So anytime there's a change initiative, it gets uncomfortable. And what they'll do is they'll hit it for a bit, and then they leave it alone, and it goes back to the old ways. And it's not like the old ways are steady and you know, they're performing in a peak mode. They kind of go backward, it feels like. Like with life, if there's a change initiative in your life, we have this inbuilt resistance to change. Why is that? What's your view around that?
I think it's really similar to the light and dark balance piece. Maybe you have another tattoo about this. Similar to that. You know, our body is designed to reach homeostasis. Our body is designed to adapt quickly to whatever is happening to get to a stable place. Yeah. And I think there's a natural pull, and this is a survival instinct. It's a really, really good thing that we have this, that's designed internally to let's calibrate here. Let's get to a place of stability. And so that's contrary to the fact that that works kind of in contradiction to the fact that there's growth happening at the same time. So it's like you kind of have to be okay with growing and stabilizing all at once, all at the same time, always. And so I think that's the reason that we are so uncomfortable, because there's a biological part of us that's built in to stabilize us. Yeah.
There is a chemical that's released to depress you, to stop you. Just like there's a chemical release to start you, just like the adrenaline, there's one that cortisol shuts it down. And so having that balance in there, you're really you're using the body basically to create growth externally. like in your business, it's just an extension of your body because it's the stuff that you're creating with your body. So what applies to the body applies to the things you touch externally. And that could be anything. That could be relationships. That could be your spirituality. That could be business.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really what it comes down to. And to answer your earlier question in terms of why do I do this, I think that what I've learned in my life, and I'm growing, thankfully. And I had a really severe experience with, almost losing my life to a health crisis a year and a half ago, where I really felt what it looked like to be moving in the dying direction, right? Like to actually experience that physically and emotionally and otherwise. So luckily I'm on the other trajectory now, back to growing. And so I'm constantly at my growth edge and in the discomfort of all of that. But what I've really found is that it's not so complicated, right? Like the way that you walk that tightrope of those two, seemingly divergent experience of stabilizing and growing is really just developing a series of protocols for yourself so that it's like, okay, discomfort is here, because it's going to happen. It's not a question of maybe I'll be uncomfortable. It's if you're growing, if you're continuing to thrive, it's going to happen. So it's like, okay, got it. So this is discomfort. This is me in discomfort. What am I now going to do? How am I now going to react? And I think that's the real learning in life, is because everyone's different. Everyone has a different set of tools that work for them. And I think there are lots of commonalities, right? So there are common threads and there's differences and nuance within that of things that, and through our lives, there are nuances and we shift in what works for us. But having a set of protocols that really work for you to stabilize in that moment, that's the real kicker. So you're limiting your downtime.
So if we were to pull back in, you mentioned trauma at the beginning, how a person just continually stabs himself with that trauma. So they get into that space or that spiral where they go downward. A protocol in that case might be to distract, or DBT skills, or some other tool that helps stabilize you so that you can launch back up. All you're trying to do is stop the spin. It's almost like a skydiver that's out of control. They're taught tools to stabilize in the air. And that's all you're trying to do. You're spiraling. So now it's just getting that foundation again so that you can build back up. And you do have to go back. But the beauty is with muscles, there's a memory in there that is never lost. As soon as you gain that memory in your muscle, it's permanent. You have it for life. So the rebuilding of it is a lot quicker than if you were building it from scratch.
I have found that to be very true. And part of the reason that that's the case too is how our brain works.
Yeah.
And how neural pathways get formed. And that's another place where we kind of see this dissonance between the brain is going to prefer the easiest path. And the easiest path is the pathway that's well practiced, well rehearsed. It's the high speed highway, right? And it's like in our brain, there's no paving the highway. The way the highway becomes the highway is, a lot of cars drive down it every day. And eventually it widens more and more, it becomes easier, more and more smooth. And it becomes this high speed thing. And so it's like the habits that we formed 10 years ago and that we've been practicing for 10 years are going to have a much more high speed neural pathway than something that we learned yesterday. Something that we learned yesterday, literally, there's like a bulldozer happening through our brain. It's like, I need to go down this new pathway. Can I do it? And that's what happens when we're learning something new. We literally, sometimes, I don't know if you experience this, but I feel like my brain hurt. It's like, yeah, I cannot take more information in right now. And that's part of the natural process of learning, because literally there's a new pathway that's being bulldozed and it's not comfortable. And so I think that's the challenge, is that we fall into habits over time that may have served us 10 years ago, but with the growth that we've experienced since then, it no longer applies, or it might have helped us with that trauma, processing the trauma that happened 10 years ago. At that point, this was survival, right? That pathway allowed us to survive, but now it's just getting in the way. It's distracting us from our potential. And so, I think it's being aware of the fact, again, that this discomfort is normal. This discomfort is part of growth. I'm choosing to take this path of discomfort in service of growth because I believe in growth. And it's okay that I feel uncomfortable.
It's perfect.
And here are the protocols that will support me so I feel more, well, I don't know that I'll feel more comfortable, but that I'll feel, at least that I'll feel more supported, and I'll feel more, I'll feel that the protocols are giving me space to be abundant and to thrive and to enjoy various aspects of this process, even while I'm in the discomfort of the growth.
See, this is, I've talked to firefighters where I think it was Mike Garrick that we talked to about staying calm in intense situations.
Yeah.
And those protocols help you keep that calmness. That calmness keeps you in that space where you can accept what's occurring. Like, I'm in a fire. That's happening. And so your calmness allows you to decide clearly, what am I going to do next? And so that protocol gives you that foundation where you can stabilize. And then what you're talking about in the brain is we have these old pathways that have been there that we learned, maybe unhealthy behaviors, that they're like train tracks. I mean, you talk about bulldozing and roads, it's the same idea here, but you've got these old train tracks that are still there. They don't go away just because they have overgrowth on them. And so you could easily go back and use those tracks at any point. And so what we're trying to do is lay down new tracks. And in doing that, the brain, when you sleep, it goes through and it cleans it up. That bulldozing, that pain in the head, that pressure is, you've got these microglia that go in there and they clean it up. They clean up all the debris and they clear up the tracks. And then another one comes in and supports it, makes it faster. And so when people have an understanding of how their brain works, this is how behaviors are created. Because if you can understand how neural pathways are created, when you create a new behavior, you know it's going to take time and persistence and doing it over and over, and it will get easier, but it takes that persistence. You're just like getting my mind going like, I'm loving it. I lost your volume there. There we go.
There was a very loud motorcycle that was going down the street, so I muted myself so you didn't have to listen to that. Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that's part of it. So there are protocols that we can incorporate into our lives, like not just sleep and it occurring, because hopefully it's happening for everybody in some kind of way. We're always, talking about how much sleep and all of these pieces. But also in terms of what's the quality of the sleep? How are we supporting that sleep? How are we setting up our day? Yeah, to really allow ourselves, our body, to detox properly at night, not just in terms of the brain, because the other part of this is then, stuff gets cleared out of your brain, but then it goes somewhere. It doesn't just like disappear. It has to be cleared out through the lymphatic system, through your drainage, through your elimination system. There's all these different body processes. It's really amazing. It's this magical system that, it's extraordinary how our bodies work. And it's also extraordinary how many levels and layers there are in supporting our body and working at its best. And how many, for me, after my health crisis, I went through a discovery of all the ways in which I was getting in the way of my body working properly. Yeah.
So can you talk about that? What were some of the ways that you were getting in your own way?
Yeah, well, one of the big ways is movement and how we allow our system to properly. And Carrie was asking, I think, some of the ways to what did she say, to get through discomfort in terms of tools. So I think let's answer that question in two parts. Part one is kind of best practices overall to support yourself and maybe not even getting to that severe level of discomfort because your body's naturally working with you instead of working against you. And then part two is what you can do when you're in that moment of, there is resistance or I'm in discomfort. What do I do now? So part one, I think that, like I was just saying, in terms of moving our bodies, there's lots of things that we don't recognize. I have really found, number one, it's just so important to start out the day with moving. And I used to go straight into meditation. And now I've learned that the meditation actually is more effective if you move first and not for like hours. I mean, you could get up really early and do that. But I get up and I just take a walk around the block or, you know, even just like here in the yard, back and forth, like 5 times, you know, just it's really, really healthy for our eyes to experience light as early in the day as possible. And that actually kicks off a whole set of metabolic processes that then release melatonin in the second half of the day that prepares us for better and deeper sleep. So that's just a really great way to start the day.
Too easy. Can you give us something more complicated?
Well, and I love dry brushing too in the morning, which is
you're not the first to mention that. Go into that. Yeah. What does that do?
So I mean, they sell dry brushes for like a premium, or you could just get a brush that you know, like one of those, I don't have it here with me, but like a brush, you know, that like a long brush with a wooden handle that you would use in the shower.
Right.
Stephen McGee talked about that in the L4. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's so powerful. I've been using it for years. It's, it really changes. You know, I've been using it for years sporadically, but since my health crisis, I've been using it daily. And it makes a huge difference in moving, and it both moves your lymphatic system, because the lymphatic system literally, it sits right under the skin. That's where the drainage happens. And then the other thing that happens is it actually helps you shed your dead skin so that your skin can refresh, which is kind of cool. But the lymphatic system cleanse is the piece that I think is most important about it.
Right, and I started doing
you do it around. You do your whole body with it, so you can have this long handle. So you literally, and you want to be moving towards the heart.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're moving towards the heart, but when you're in the stomach area, you want to be moving towards the elimination organs, because you want to help everything come out.
There's a flow that you need to go in.
Yeah.
To move, you're creating that movement in the direction it needs to go with the brush.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I have about 40 different protocols that I walk people through that they can kind of pick and choose from, and they can try out, and they can see how their body responds. Usually after you've done something for a few days, your body will be telling you this, I want more of this. And you just have to have the attunement to notice that. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do to help that elimination process happen properly. So, I mean, light and movement are really, really powerful as a starting point. Food is a really, really powerful component too, not just in terms of what you eat or what you don't eat, but how you combine food and how you allow food to activate other foods' nutrition. Because if you actually think about how things get digested and processed, you know, there are ways that you can help or impede that process. And so it's a really fascinating science.
Ryan, there's some, this will be a part you can share, but we supplement our food. And we found this through a doctor, Rachel Smart, who's a good friend of ours. But it's hard to get the nutrients nowadays. Yeah. And your brain, there's 46 different elements it can pull from to create the energy that it needs. And it consumes about 20% of the energy produced by your body. So if you're not getting the right nutrients, in addition to movement, like you're talking about, if you're not getting the nutrients, you're not going to think straight. And so we take our, he eats it in gummies, but I take
like a little kid.
Like, yeah, it's not the weed gummies, it's the other ones.
Nope.
Are you sure?
Yeah, maybe. But it's convenient, but it also creates that craving where your body just starts to crave those fruits and vegetables because you need it. And it's really hard to eat enough nutrients, especially with our farming and everything that's going on, to really get those into your body. And so I'm glad you hit on that. I mean, that was a little plug for something we're participating in, but that's awesome.
I know that our sponsors are going to be sad today because I don't think that they're on the list of the 40.
the ice drink.
For our sponsors.
I was just joking before you came on the show that I was drinking this sparkling ice with caffeine to get going in the morning this morning, and I don't think it's on the list.
We'll have to evaluate it.
They're not real sponsors. We were just plugging them too, apparently.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that there are lots of food-based sources of caffeine that we can use that are much easier for our body to process and tend to have a more lasting effect. So I think there are ways to use caffeine whether it's, and mushrooms don't have caffeine, but I'm a huge proponent of using mushrooms, dried mushrooms in drinks to get a similar effect in terms of our brain's response and to get more focus.
Are you talking about magic mushrooms or standard?
I am not talking about magic mushrooms, unfortunately. Yeah. No,
there's a lot of research.
You heard it, kids. Straight from Julia and Ryan. Gummies and mushrooms.
That's the takeaway today.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna have a great time dealing with growth and any changes in the world. You might not even notice them, actually. Yeah. Yeah, that's an area of experimentation that honestly I haven't really gone down myself. And I say that kind of as a joke, but kind of not, because I know that there are medicinal uses to both that are powerful, but it's not an area that I have any expertise in recreationally or functionally. So
weed gummies and mushrooms. So our solution is don't eat fruits and vegetables, eat weed gummies and mushrooms. And you're good.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to agree with that in terms of combining, but we'll talk.
She detaches her name completely from it.
I got to go. I just remembered I have
a thing.
I got a thing.
I just heard a coyote back there.
Yeah, right. This is great because you're hitting on these protocols, like developing protocols of any sort, where when you get into that downward spiral that you can stop the spiral. That's what your goal is. And then from there to spiral back up. So some of the protocols are actually there to get you back up on the path. Is that correct?
Right. That's exactly right. And the other thing that I would say kind of works in both categories is meditation. And I think having some kind of mindfulness practice is really, really meaningful. And I think that there's a misconception about meditation. A lot of people think that that don't meditate think that meditation is about just being still. Mm-hmm. And there's stillness is a part of pretty much all practices of meditation for sure. But I wouldn't encourage someone to start out with just sitting there for 5 minutes in stillness and having that be their first foray into meditation. I really am a big fan of guided meditations. I personally I've worked with a pranic healer for quite a while, and I work with the Twin Hearts meditation myself personally, which has been really, really transformative for my life and my brain chemistry. I can feel the neurochemistry actually shift as I do more and more consistent daily meditation. But I think that we can take elements of that to address. So when we're in this moment of either stress or anxiety or, and some people experience it physiologically, like your heart's racing. Sometimes, palms will be sweating, that kind of thing. Some people experience it very emotionally, right? Like I feel very sad right now. I feel very disengaged. I feel like I don't want to do anything. Almost like a bout of depression in the moment. And for some people that sustains for days or longer. When you get to that place, I think the first step that is really, really powerful is breath, is using breath to literally oxygenate ourselves and to fuel ourselves. Because I think that, everyone talks about just breathe, and it's such a, and you kind of don't want to even do it because you're angry in that moment. And you're, it's like, I am not breathing, but
I'm going to breathe. And not only that, I'm going to punch you in the face.
Exactly. And in the absence of someone else, that you is usually yourself.
Yeah.
So that's not a good place to be for sure. And I've been there, not the actual punching, but getting, having a really strong desire to like crawl out of my skin in that moment.
Yeah, it reminds me of Jim Carrey, where you can't lie. Liar, liar. Remember?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yourself in the bathroom.
That's me. Yeah, exactly. So, but I think what you have to recognize and just kind of use your intelligent self for a moment, even as you're in this emotional experience, just remember that we are physical. We are experiencing this life through a physical realm, right? And so our body is part of the process. And the way that our body is experiencing that moment is going to affect our emotional capacity. That's the thing that I really learned when I was really, really sick, because I was basically bleeding out. I was really, really undernourished, under-resourced. It was dramatic. And I realized that there's because of the physiological things that are happening. And my pulse was sky high. I mean, it was like 130 for literally almost 2 months straight.
Can you touch on what happened? I don't know the story. Like briefly, what occurred that you were in that situation?
So I ended up being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and gastritis, but it took a while to get the diagnosis because I was so inflamed they couldn't perform the test, the colonoscopy on me to actually verify that.
Wow.
And it was basically, I went from being totally healthy to just having some diarrhea for 3 weeks, which was unusual, to bedbound and bleeding out and losing 30 pounds within 3 weeks. And I didn't need to. And so it was really intense. And I literally experienced my body breaking down almost cell by cell. And then the rebuilding, the healing process was just this magical discovery of how every part of the body works and how it needs to be supported to be rebuilt, which ended up being the biggest gift because I had such a visceral experience of all these parts of me that I normally wouldn't have access to. And through that, I really understood the power of the connection of our mental state and our mindset and the thoughts that we think, as well as the emotions that then are triggered by those thoughts and the physical body. And it really works both ways. So the way that the body's physiology affects us emotionally, there are hormones involved. There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, sometimes people make all these assumptions about others about, well, you just be happier, just breathe, just do this. And you're like, I can't, and the body really isn't allowing you to do that. So what I discovered there was a point in time when breathing was the only thing I could absolutely control.
Right.
And I'm just, with COVID, there are people that can't control even that. So I'm grateful that I had that capacity. So if you have that capacity when you're in a moment of stress, I really, really encourage you and challenge you. And if not for you, for me, encourage you to just try this crazy thing of really, really doing deep breathing. And the best thing what I love is doing 6-3-6-3 breathing, which is basically inhaling on a count of 6, holding your breath for 3 counts, and then exhaling for 6 counts and holding for 3. And then doing another inhale for 6 counts, holding for 3, exhaling for 6, holding for 3, and doing that at least 5 times. If you can do that 5 times, I promise you something will shift. Your world might not, miraculously heal just from that. But you will feel much more in your body. You're going to feel much more resourced in terms of decisions that you have to make. And it's, everyone's different in terms of and I work with people to develop protocols specifically for for how their mind works, for how their body works, for how their nervous system works, because everyone's a little bit different. But the breath is something that we all share, and that can be really, really powerful.
Yeah, I like the 7-2-7-2 breathing.
I was going to say the 5-1-5-1.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of research around breathing. Wim Hof is big on breathing. Navy SEALs use it. They do box breathing. They breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. Same idea, but the breathing stabilizes the sympathetic nervous system. And here's another thing that ties into that too: crying. Can we hit on crying a little bit and what that does to the body, Ryan?
I'm such a baby. It's true.
Some people think it's not okay to cry. Like, don't be a crybaby. Don't cry.
I just realized this the other day, and how freeing and refreshing and transformative it is to cry.
So and we may be complete right there. Yeah.
And I think there's, we have again all these judgments of ourselves in these moments. It's like in these moments we're suddenly, and by the way, I liken this to the stock market because I've started playing with some options trading just recently for the first time. And when my stock's going up, I'm like, yay, this is great, everything's good. And when it's going down, it's like, why didn't I think of this? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I, it's like you go down this whole like chain of self-judgments that suddenly appear. And so it's like when your life stock is going down in your mind, and by the way, it can go up like 2 seconds later, and then you're like, oh yeah, that whole experience I just had, never mind. I did all the right things. I'm totally good. And it's, they say that we experience anything negative, whether it's criticism or, in that case, self-criticism, anything negative, 5-to-1 ratio. So 5 times more weight is given to the negative than to the positive. And so that's another piece of how important it is to use mantras, use various affirmations and things like that in our lives to rebalance things for ourselves.
I'm going to write that down. You're talking about mindset. Let me just get this thought in real quick. I got to do the typing and the talking, and so we'll get it here.
A lot.
There it is. There we go. So
I can barely like breathe and walk and talk at the same time. So
you're hitting on the mindset. You talk about being the vessel and the self-judgment, and it's self-referential, it's self-judgment, it's self-beliefs, it's these ideas that we have that create the blockages. It's the stories that we tell ourselves that create the blockages. Somebody could go through the same experience as you and have a completely different outcome, a different experience, the same event, but different experience.
Yep.
And so we're the ones that kind of create the blockage. We're the ones that
Here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt you, but this is the fun part. And this is to answer your question of why I do this.
Yeah.
Because it is so fun to get to walk with people as they discover this and as they start to apply these tools for themselves and they start to see how life can be so different. And it's like, why would I do anything but get to be a part of that, right? And then, of course, it reminds me of all these things, and I'm constantly working on them too. So I think that's the secret other reason. But the great thing in what you just said is like someone can have one experience, someone else can have a completely different experience.
Yeah.
But the best part is that you can have the same experience differently in this next minute. Like you can have. That's the thing. It's not like, oh my God, wait a second. Mic drop. I need to like redo this. I didn't do my early morning walk. I didn't meditate today. I didn't like all these things. I didn't do the dry brushing. Therefore, I'm going to have to start over tomorrow. Only then will I get a chance to do this differently. No. You get to decide like, wait a second. I don't like how I just did this. I'm going to do it differently right now. And that's, I think, what's so powerful about our brains and our bodies. It's like when you make that decision, literally your brain and your body will follow you. It will support you in this totally different empowered stance.
So you said I can do that, but nobody else, right?
Just you. Yeah.
Just
yeah.
you.
Yeah. Ryan can't do that.
No, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'm already transforming if you can see the light on my shoulder.
The light is
Julia in the morning.
The beauty of what you just said is nobody holds the market on that. There's no way like a De Beers to say, hey, I own all the diamonds, so we're going to mark up pricing.
That's right.
It's available and it's free to everybody. This is a free thing that you can implement right now. Is if something's not going the way you want, or you're seeing it a certain way, in the very next moment, change that thought.
Yeah. And I work with Stephen McGee. He's my coach, and I'm actually his apprentice right now, which is the most amazing experience. Yeah. And he says, be undeserving, right? Like, you don't have to deserve this thing. You don't have to, because that's sometimes a rut that I get myself into where it's like, well, I didn't do the work today. Again, I didn't do the meditation. I didn't do the drive. I actually did this morning. But like, if I didn't on a certain day, it's like, I don't deserve to have a better experience at this moment. Be undeserving.
If we were to break that word up, undeserving, day meaning of and serving. If you're unserving, you're not serving, right? You think you're not, you don't deserve it because you haven't served.
It's like we need an R in there. Underserving. Yeah.
You could put, that'd be beautiful. Just throw underserving. Really, if it kind of, I can see both sides of that. You really, to benefit in life, you do want to serve others. There's a value in serving others. It's really hard to go through this life alone. I've had hands up from people. I've had people push me up the steps a little bit to get me motivated. I've also been that person for other people. And so that serving is valuable. But to be undeserving, it just takes it to a level of there's this entitlement. I deserve this because I worked for this. So I deserve this. Taking that away frees you up to really create some powerful things. I love that. It's a great thought.
Well, and it works both ways, that entitlement, right? Like the feeling unentitled to be having a life of joy, of fulfillment, of flow, of ease. Ease can happen even when we're uncomfortable. That's the thing that's crazy. It's like we can be highly uncomfortable, but experience it with ease and flow. And I think that's really the goal.
And we could keep going. We're already an hour in. I can't believe it. Just went by so fast. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
So if you were to go back in time, let's say you went back and talked to yourself prior to the awakening, and you could give yourself some advice. It's a little 6-year-old you know, that says, I'm going to change the world. What would you tell her?
That's such a great question. I would tell her that everything is unfolding as it should, that you don't actually have to figure anything out, that you don't have to find the path, that the path will appear. You just have to, what you want to do is focus your attention and your intention on strengthening the container and the vessel that you are, and really making it as abundant, as beautiful, as flexible, as easeful, as healthy, and really focus on the practices in your life that will support that, and everything else will come. You don't have to push into what the goals are, the goal being, you know, help uplift the world. So you don't have to push that forward. You don't have to push the earth up. You don't have to develop, because I think one of the things that young me believed is that I need to literally build up the muscle so that I can do the pushing. And so I need to push myself as hard as possible so that I can expand the bounds. Like, let's make sure I can survive with no sleep. Let's make sure I can do all these things. Let's make sure that I'm not going to, there's big work ahead for me. And I really had an inner sense that was the case. I didn't know what was going to happen. No idea the pandemic was coming at that point, you know, or who knows what will follow, right? But I felt like I needed to make myself strong to push through obstacles that will be coming my way and to stand for the people that I want to stand for in the future. And the truth is, if I can make my container strong, and if I can learn to use it as a vessel and allow it to really be used as a vessel, it's actually, I'm not using it, I'm allowing it to be used as a vessel. That's the real power. That's where my real power comes from, is being able to channel power through me. Okay, so you're hitting, man, I could go down a complete rabbit hole on this because it's beautiful. I was having a conversation with somebody this morning about scaling. When you scale up is a bigger version of the smaller version. It's the same system and structure, but it's bigger. And we're talking about small steps and how small steps can lead to giant outcomes. It's not because your stride necessarily increases in relation to your body. It's that you become a giant. You build the capacity to take bigger steps. And it's in relation to your body, that step is still a small step. You're just a giant. And so when you work on the container and you build that up, Spiral Dynamics, have you read that? Have you looked into that book? I actually haven't. It's been on my list for a while. Oh, I think you'll love it. And Limitless is another one. Yeah, that one. So on Spiral Dynamics, he talks about the different levels that people go through: survival, tribal, me, myself, I, the religious, the political, and all this. And we go through these levels. And you don't go to another level until you've built the capacity for that prior level. But once you build that capacity, then you can advance to the next level. And what you're describing here is when we build the vessel, then we advance. It's not because it's simply because our capacity to do so has increased because we've built the vessel, right? And it's not like we're taking strides that are way beyond us. We're still taking small steps. We're just building up the muscle, the foundation that allows us to go more and more. And I think there's a level of, go ahead. Yeah, keep going. I was done. That was complete for me. So
Go ahead.
I think there's a level of trust with that, and there's I don't know what the official statement is in word for word, but basically in the Bible at some point, and this is not a religious statement. I think it's just a statement on how the world works, that God never gives you more than you can handle. And I think the universe, if you want to translate God to the universe, whatever your belief system is, doesn't give you more than you can handle. I think it's very true. And I love your philosophy about the idea of seeing the giant in you and bolstering that giant, that spirit of that giant, and that vessel and the container of the giant, because that allows you to handle more. And I think I've always wanted to do that, but the way in which I tried to do it in my earlier years was actually counterproductive in terms of that. And it was actually, trying to force the giant to overcome things to prove the giant's value and ability to survive and thrive, rather than actually uplifting the giant so that my giant can thrive, or me as giants, I can thrive. Yeah.
Such great language, the giant language. It just fits everything. So you can't put the capacity, if you don't have 10 cups of capacity and you're just a 1 cup, and you're trying to put 10 cups in there, you just can't. It'll never give you more than you can handle. Right.
Yep.
And so what you want to do is build up your ability to handle more.
And to know that if you're being given challenges, and sometimes if you're being given the same kind of challenge repeatedly, this is a huge opportunity to nurture yourself, to support yourself through the challenge, and to see that the fact that it's coming to you repeatedly is a chance for you to grow your giant arm or your giant leg, or there's a part of you that's being called to grow differently. And if it keeps not working, maybe something about the way that you approached it in the past. This is very true for me in several different instances. Maybe that the ways that you've approached it in the past didn't allow you to grow in that way. And so you're being given another opportunity. And I really believe in the power of using everything that happens to us for our learning and growth. And I will tell you, when I was thinking that I wasn't going to make it, it was a very hard philosophy to buy into, right? I had been a professional coach for over 10 years at that point. And I knew this work inside and out, and I taught it, and I supported people through it. And when I was in that moment, literally on the bathroom floor, dealing with all of the things, that's the moment where you really learn how to step into that trust and how to step into that sense of understanding that, okay, I don't know yet why this extraordinarily challenging, painful situation is happening to me, but I'm going to trust that it's happening for my growth. And I'm going to stick with that until I learn, later I'll get it. I'll trust that later I will understand this. I don't need to understand. That's the other part of it. I don't need to understand it to grow from it and in it in this moment.
Yeah. Brian, do you have some thoughts around that?
I've been gathering this like a sponge and it's interesting how a lot of these things have been in play in the last several weeks of my life. And I didn't know how to explain some of it. And Julia coming on and talking about it was maybe a little different than I would have worded it, but it fits perfectly. So I'm appreciative of that. And I apologize too of some of my technical difficulties. We can do this happens a lot with the Giants. It's funny because we can do 20 shows or 20 different things, me and Nick back and forth, and have no technical issues. And then all of a sudden a Giant comes on that has some amazing message to share that can help a lot of people grow. And then whoop, there's these challenges that come up.
I'm
thankful for them because they help us grow.
I think it's our electromagnetic pulse that we all put off that shorts out our electronics.
It's our vibration.
Our giantness, right? Maybe something good. I know we're at the end of time here on this show. Not the world's not ending, guys. Just to be fair.
I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah. If you were to advise somebody, not advise, but give them some wisdom for their journey as they started, what would you say to somebody that's starting their journey?
I think there are so many things I would say, but I'll just pick this idea of of stepping into loving from a place of discovery. Because I remember when I was a teenager and I was first told this idea of you have to learn how to love yourself before you start, before you can really build anything. And it sounds really beautiful and, lofty, but how do you actually love yourself? What does that really mean? And what I want to encourage you, well, both of you, but also all the capital Y, anyone who's here with us, anyone who's tuning in for what we're doing here. I think that, again, similar, like this idea of let's love yourself is a big concept. Let's break it down to a very, very, very tiny concept, which is, can you be in awe of the tiny ways in which you work, right? Like, can we just be in awe of the fact that when we decide to move our right leg, for most of us, something happens, right? And usually the right one moves. Can we be in awe of the fact that when we take a breath in, oxygen comes in, there's the hydrogen, there's the oxygen, like they know what to do. It all happens magically. Can we be in awe of the fact that our system does all these amazing things? Can we be in awe of the fact that when we call someone, when we tell them something kind, that they smile, that we have that power, or that, right now we're all in masks, but normally when we're walking down the street, we can smile at someone. And sometimes they look away, they can't handle it. Sometimes they're just not in the mode of being, engaging with anyone else. And that's okay. But sometimes you can just tell that their whole energy shifts, and you have that power just by smiling at someone. And it's like, we're all so focused on all the ways in which we don't measure up most of the time. And just starting to notice these tiny, tiny moments throughout the day where you have the opportunity to either be more present with yourself and what's occurring in your body, or to be present with someone else, even for a second, and to uplift them through that presence, through that, deep connection that you have with them. Even, again, just a smile, that's a deep connection in my book.
Yeah.
To realize the power that you hold to shift the world through those tiny, tiny engagements. And to me, discovering yourself as an active agent that's creating your own life and your own state of being, your own aliveness, as well as impacting others through these micro engagements. And some of them are going to be macro, like, you might actually save someone's life. You never know if that smile was they were at the last straw moment, and that smile was the thing that gave them hope to continue for another day, and that set off a whole bunch of others. So you just never know.
Right.
I think that's really the opportunity to start stepping into loving yourself and to really getting to know the powerful giant that you are.
I love it. There's that ties into, there's a quote that came up for me. You give me a lever big enough and I can move the world. And that lever is tiny engagements. It's this tiny thing that can make a massive impact in the world. And it's that tiny engagement with somebody else that can lead to a giant shift in their life. And so that's beautiful. I think that's a great way to end the show. Did you have any other thoughts or any programs that we can announce for you and tell people about real quick?
Yeah. So in a week and a half, I'm going to be launching my program called the Empowered Life Strategy, which is really all about developing the protocols in your life. And if you already have them, revisiting them and up-leveling them, and really, playing around with new things for 10 weeks. It's a 10-week program that is designed to have you emerge from the 10 weeks with a life strategy protocol for yourself, a roadmap that will really allow you to handle the vicissitudes of life with more grace and ease and flow and fun, and to also up-level perhaps your understanding of yourself, to really, in a way, I haven't talked about it. I haven't said this in this way before, but I think it's really true. It's to recognize who you actually are as a giant, how giant you actually are now. Because a lot of us hold a vision of ourselves from like 10 years ago, and we were this big a giant. Now we're this big. Yeah. And then also to recognize that can, over the 10-week period, the idea is to really allow that to naturally grow through these ways that we support ourselves each day, and to develop some habits. 10 weeks is a long enough time to start to really get habits developed. So there's there are going to be amazing people in the program, a lot of accountability to support you in playing with these new behaviors. And it's really designed for people that are ready for that next step. And at this point, we have a few spots in the program. So I would love to invite any giants or giants that are aspiring to be even more giant, to see themselves for who they are, to just have a conversation. Because for me, it's really important that the fit is there, and I love just talking to people. So let me know. I can post a link afterwards to sign up for a conversation with me, and and we can see if it's a fit.
Yeah,
please, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, Ryan, any other thoughts from you on this?
You know, and I met Julia through the L4 through Stephen McGee, and was so impressed with her. We had just a small conversation on one of the breakout sessions, and at that time, it was the busiest time in my life that I could remember like ever. And I was grateful to be able to connect with her, and was impressed with everything that she was doing. So I'm grateful, Julia, that you came on the show, that you accepted that invitation, and we're so excited to promote you. You are a giant. You are living into your giant potential, and you are doing what your 6-year-old self wanted to do. You're changing the world, and for that we are grateful, and we love you. We appreciate you, and we're so excited to see where it goes from here. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if anyone's looking for a person who's just kind of like not just a giant himself, but also a giant maker and a giant connector, Stephen McGee is the man, 100%. I mean, the people that I've met through Stephen McGee have just been extraordinary. And I'm so grateful that we met, Ryan. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning of our journey together. And Nick, I mean, it's just so great to connect with both of you. It's amazing what you're up to. And I just want to say how powerful it is that you're doing the work that you're doing with kids. And I don't know where your daughter went. But hopefully we'll get her to sing one of these days. You know, I think it's just allowing kids to experience the giantness that's in them. I think kids are actually bigger giants than adults. We qualify our giantness over the years, and then we go through a process of re-allowing it to grow. But I think kids are literally, they are our future, and their thoughts and their tendencies about themselves and about how they relate to the world will literally create the future that we live in. So thank you so much for investing your energy in that.
That was awesome. Thank you. So, you know, the beauty of this story is it fits every level of life. So whether you're a kid or you're a grandparent, it doesn't matter, because the message is the same. At any point, you can awaken to the way you've been playing. And so if you're 4 years old, we've got kids that are 4 years old that are already talking giant language. We had another one from the Netherlands that just sent in a review that said, you know, they talk like they're a giant. We had one of our friends posted about her 12-year-old sons. We have people who are seniors in life that are changing their lives right now because of this message. It's not just for kids. It's for all of us. I wrote it for you and me. I wrote it for me so that I would remember, and I wrote it for my kids so that they would remember. We all have giant potential. Until the day you die, even then, I think you've still got giant potential. Who knows where you go from there, but I think you still grow. So just keep growing at any point in your life. We've got that ability. So I appreciate everybody being on the show. Make sure that you follow Julia. And if you want to hang tight for a minute, we usually just banter for a second if you have time. If not, we'll end the show and we'll be good. But I appreciate everybody that's been on here. And so make it a giant day.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. I'm going to kick these banners here. If anybody has comments, they can post comments for Julia if you're still with us. And
yeah, and if you have questions too, I'm happy. I'll jump on and answer them, or I can do a video if it's a long question later.
Perfect. That'd be perfect. Yeah, thank you. This was awesome. Man, Ryan, I just see you taking notes.
I knew it was going to be good, because the second I started having technical issues, I'm like, okay. And I'm like running through my house, from the basement, running out to my car. I'm like, I'm missing stuff. No.
Good thing it's recorded, huh?
Yeah.
We never miss anything ever again now. Everything's recorded.
I know.
Right?
It's going back through it. That's the challenge right there.
That's right.
Man, I know that we barely even tapped or touched on the things that that you've learned. And man, it's amazing how many different views there are about how the world works, but there's these common themes that show up throughout. Like in the Giant's journey, there's beliefs and views about how we operate, and it all comes back to self. Like when you heal this, like I think Nicole posted healthy self, heal thyself, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you heal yourself, then you can have better interactions with others. Then you can go create. And sometimes you create while you're healing. It's not that you have to heal first and then do it.
I think that's what I honestly think we're never done. There's more healing available. Because that's the other thing. I think part of the creative process is trauma. It is, that's the bulldozer in our brain. I mean, there's actual trauma that's happening, micro trauma. To allow for something new, to build something new, you have to destroy something in the process.
I'm glad you said that. I was reading a book and they said that sleep heals the brain damage that occurs by being awake. Right?
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
There's a lot of brain damage sometimes, especially where I work.
Yeah.
I need that sleep.
But you really are. I mean, I love that you hit that, because the trauma, you're creating damage, and trauma is damage, and it's at an emotional level, but you're creating that damage physically, spiritually, mentally, and then you're healing from it. And when you heal from it, you lay a foundation. Muscles are just torn muscles, built on torn muscles. They expand on themselves, but you have to tear that muscle to get it to grow. And same with my brain. Yeah, go ahead.
No. That's exactly it. Literally, it's how we work physically. But there's also a spiritual element to that as well, right? It's we're going through a spiritual journey too, and there are things that we are up leveling in throughout our life, and perhaps there's more than just this life on that journey.
That's possible. We just, man, this is perfect. We lost you right at the end and not through the show. Hopefully she comes back.
And talking about leveling up.
I saw the smile on your face.
And level up. Yeah, that happens a lot. I get excited when it aligns. There's been a lot of alignment for me. I was on a call last night, and with Deb. Hi, Deb, if you're watching. And the synchronicity behind all this, everything that Julia was saying, and the things that were coming up. That's why I was kind of being quiet, actually, is because I was absorbing all of the things that were being said, because it's been happening, and this is something that's been being a student, and I felt like I should just be a fly on the wall for a second and absorb this stuff. But I'll have more to say on it throughout the week, and
awesome.
And this is good. So thank you.
I had a conversation with an older gentleman. He was 84 years old, and I said, "So what do you do? You're retired?" And he said, "I work every day in my yard, and I'm always learning something new." Like he said, "I want to learn how to carve wood." And so that was his next thing to learn at 84. He's like, "I'll never stop learning." And he was healthy and attentive. And I think part of that is when you push yourself like that and you just keep going, then you have a reason to live, right? But you're never done learning. It's like this, I think you hit on it, she hit on it. You're just never done. So it's cool. Well, dude, let's end it.
Well, I appreciated it. And bye, Julia. Thanks for. She must have said everything that we needed to hear as Giants, right?
Yep.
So
and we can continue the conversation in the comments. So
yeah, let's do it, and then we'll look forward to the next guest.
All right, guys. Have a great week.